The middle of May is peak Dynasty trade season, so we are going to be breaking down 12 Dynasty trades that you guys have made in your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues, looking over them via our Dynasty Trade Calculator trade review tool over on Flock Fantasy. Should be a fun one. If you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here. Now let's get into it. All right, so the first team or the first trade that we're going to tackle here is from Evan over on Twitter. He submitted this one to us, a Superflex Dynasty 12-team league. And of course, on our Flock Trade Calculator, you can actually input those settings. 3 wide receiver start is what he told us, tight end premium, Superflex, 12-team full PPR. So again, that's why our trade calculator is better than anybody else's, because it actually adjusts the ELOs to your specific league. And exactly in a 3 wide receiver start, obviously wide receivers become more valuable. In a super flex league, quarterbacks become more valuable, so on and so forth. He ended up receiving Mike Evans and a random 2026 third in exchange for a mid-second in 2024, which was actually the 206, and then 2 thirds in 2025 and 2026. I mean, this also is based on my specific rankings. This trade calculator, you can sort by Danny's, you can sort by Mason's, the overall community, the expert rankings that you can see here, our community rankings also think it's pretty even. They actually think that we're robbing them in that case. So looking at this trade from my perspective, I mean, I value the picks pretty highly. That's kind of where it's at. That's why I'm a little bit higher on the 206. You can get a good player there, and Xavier Legette, somebody like that. But Mike Evans in a 3 wide receiver start league, you're trying to win a championship. To me, this makes a whole lot of sense. Buying some production, getting yourself pretty much wide receiver 1 production on the cheap. This is a guy I have ranked inside my top 20 overall players in redraft leagues, a guy that I'm very comfortable projecting for 15 points per game.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that assessment. Again, if you're trying to buy some point equity in this situation, which is what Mike Evans represents here, like you said, you're getting a top 12-ish level projection at the wide receiver position in this upcoming year for fantasy football. So the way I kind of equate this, obviously the 2026 thirds, you can basically take off the deal. So the meat and potatoes here is the 206 plus the future third in exchange for Mike Evans. And like we said, 206, maybe if you're lucky, you get a guy like Xavier Legette there. If we're equating Xavier Legette plus a 3 for Mike Evans in the contending window, I'm willing to pay that price. And it's funny because you guys will see in the future, once we do release those videos, also made a trade for Mike Evans this offseason on a contending team.
Yeah, exactly. Some people, like if you guys are like newer Dynasty players, you might think that like this is absolute robbery. Like Mike Evans should not be going for this cheap on the open market. But again, depending on what rookie falls to you there, if you get a Michael Penix there, if you get a Trey Benson there, if you get a Xavier Legette there, if you like, Ricky Pearsall or Jalen Polk or something like that, there's definitely a world where this trade works out for the other guy. It's just that, I'm okay paying this price tag. The prospect that you're getting at 206 is not nearly going to be the threat to the value that Mike Evans can give you in terms of production right now. So definitely love that trade from Evan. We can move on to the next trade, which is from Perk Cousins here. So Perk Cousins moved up from the 103 to the 102, wanted to secure Caleb Williams, wanted to secure Marvin Harrison Jr. He didn't actually say which one he ended up securing, so I'm assuming he hasn't had his rookie draft yet. But he uses Jaden Reed in this example here, trades up 1 spot, gets himself in that range where he's guaranteed one of Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., 2 players that both you and I have ranked inside our top 15 overall players in startups. Jaden Reed is a great player. Don't get me wrong. I think Jaden Reed's an awesome guy and an awesome asset to have on your team. And then the 103, I mean, whether that's Malik Neighbors, Drake May, we're talking about mid-second, early third kind of caliber startup assets here. But I think I'm okay paying this price. I mean, pocketing a 26 fourth, who cares? It's not really that big of a deal. I think it's a fair trade on either side. If the person who wants to trade down from 102 is in need of a little bit of depth, maybe they don't view Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison all that differently, or maybe they don't view Caleb Williams and Drake May all that differently if the quarterback ends up being on the board for you there. I think if this is Caleb, this is a very easy price to pay for me. But even with Marvin, I still feel comfortable with this one.
And when we see it inputted here, so if you go back to me, I basically here 102, my ranking here, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake Mays being my 103 there, substituted in. It does say that you slightly lose this deal here, but at the same time, if you have a ton of wide receivers here, like wide receiver 4 or 5 types, your Jaden Reeds, your JSNs, your even if we go down further, like Josh Downs, Deontay Johnsons, if you want to go get a hammer at the top with Marvin Harrison Jr. and you have the quarterback depth to be able to make this move, although it says you slightly lose, at the end of the day, if you're going to get a needle mover, which I think Marvin Harrison is, I think it's a fine price.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you're getting a hammer at wide receiver, I think that's always a good move. And he also says too, like I have Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, so taking Drake May at 103, it's like, yeah, that's probably the best player available. I maybe would have just been fine just holding Jaden Reed and taking Malik Neighbors there, but getting Marvin is getting Marvin. Like I understand why anybody would want to just trade up that one spot, secure the guy that you want. Hopefully Caleb doesn't fall to you in this situation. I'm sure you actually would prefer that Caleb Williams goes 101, given that you already have two stabilized quarterbacks. But if that's the case, maybe you can sell Caleb Williams for a king ransom and move down to 104 or something and take Malik Neighbors at that point.
And this next deal actually comes from Aaron Swarm over on Twitter. He says he made this on draft day. The 112 was Ladd McConkey and the 307 was Rattler. He also contextualizes here that he didn't want to give up Levis, but the Ladd and Herbert stack was too juicy and he hardly pays for stacks in Dynasty ever. So we're going to be evaluating this from a superflex lens. And yeah, the calculator does say that you don't make out well in terms of valuation here. To be honest, the way I kind of view this is Will Levis is a guy I have ranked in my own rankings between the 110 and the 112. I just wouldn't have included that 2025 second for third swap there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it specifically based on the players that you got, like part of it is that I'm a little bit higher on Will Levis than the market is, and I'm also a little bit higher on McConkey than the market is. So it kind of balances out knowing that you got McConkey. Plus, you mentioned that you have Justin Herbert. That also, obviously helps your roster because you have the stack, like you mentioned, and Spencer Rattler. I think I have slightly rated around that 307 area too. So that's a pretty decent move all told. It's just that, on the face value 112 and 307, it's not really the best move for a quarterback that both of us kind of believe in. But I mean, if you sort this by the community rankings, I believe the community is probably like you're robbing them. Like we're high on Will Levis, relatively speaking. So I think this was a generally pretty good move overall, even though it said initially that you were getting robbed. It's really all about the players that you end up getting. And if I go by your rankings, you also have Levis a little bit. You even have him higher than me and Ladd a little bit lower than me. So that's kind of where it makes out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very high on Ladd McConkey as it is, having him at 49th overall inside my top 50. It's just more so me being optimistic about Will Levis. The only real gripe I have, if you had traded Will Levis for McConkey straight up, that would make more sense to me. It's just the pick upgrade that guy gets trading Rattler for the second is something I would not have done personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting the second really insulates that guy against Will Levis potentially not working out. But both of us agree that like Will Levis is a great upside dart throw to have at quarterback, where if you need a QB2 who's a little bit younger because like Kirk Cousins is your QB3 or whatever the case is, I think Will Levis is the perfect guy to go after because he's the type of guy that can really accumulate some value. And again, it's intriguing getting the stack with McConkey there and Justin Herbert. So I understand the move from either perspective. I'm really not going to poo-poo this trade too much because I think getting the stack was worthwhile for you. So let's move on to the next trade here from Moser. So Moser makes this trade here, a 12 teams start 10 super flex. The rationale behind the trade, I agree with the premise on this rationale, but I think the execution was where you went wrong here. So his rationale was, I'm not confident that my team will be a top 3 team with Anthony Richardson, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields at quarterback. And I don't want to be caught holding the bag on Amari Cooper, Derrick Henry, right? That's stuff we talk about all the time. That's good rationale. You want to get those production pieces off of your roster. My question to you would be, why the hell did you sell Garrett Wilson then? And why did you acquire an aging running back in Tony Pollard? DJ Moore, who's fine. You can hold him through a rebuild. Jalen Waddle, that's good. Second round pick, that's fine. Just to me, some of the pieces of this trade don't align with your original statement, which is that you can't compete. If you can't compete, then why are you acquiring Tony Pollard in the first place? He is a aging running back asset. And if you can't compete, why are you selling a 23-year-old wide receiver who's a top 6 guy?
Yeah, like my issue here isn't exactly the move itself. It's more so the premise of why you made it. I understand that right now you're worried about Cooper and Henry losing a ton of value once you get in season. And I would agree there is absolutely a risk there, but there's also the benefit that if come week 3, week 4, Amari Cooper's a top 15 wide receiver in redraft and Derrick Henry is, 7 touchdowns through 4 games as a Baltimore Raven, like you should be able to get more than you kind of netted at this point. The way I kind of view this deal is I have Henry ranked higher than Pollard, but for E's sake, if you want to equate them out 110 overall versus 114 overall, sure. Like I'm not going to argue that. For me, Amari Cooper, give or take, I would take over the 2025 mid to late second, but for E's sake, if we're combining Amari Cooper, Garrett Wilson versus DJ Moore Waddle in the second, I would still take the Cooper and Wilson side because that's my valuation of a guy like Garrett Wilson. I view him as a mid-second round startup pick. I view him a guy that can touch the first round of startups that If you're not planning to compete, none of the guys that you're getting back have the value ascension that Garrett Wilson has.
Yeah, if this trade was just Derrick Henry and Amari Cooper for Jalen Waddle, then it makes a lot of sense. You got younger at wide receiver. You move off of an aging wide receiver and an aging running back production. Maybe even pocket a pick on top of Jalen Waddle in that type of move. That's kind of how you want to structure trades when you made the correct evaluation. Anthony Richardson, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields, probably not good enough to compete at quarterback. I don't know what the rest of your roster looks like, but if that's your evaluation, you got to stick to that. But again, why did you trade the best asset in the deal, which was Garrett Wilson? And he's also fits your team build because he's a 23-year-old wide receiver. I'm curious to know what the community thinks of this trade versus what ours were. Yeah, the community actually dislikes his side even more than where you and I had it. I think probably part of that is because Jalen Waddle's a little bit lower in our community rankings, and the mid to late second is a little bit less valuable, I think, in our community rankings as well. So again, this trade, great rationale. It was the right path that you were down. It's just poor execution, in my opinion. So Moser, unfortunately, I do think that you lost this trade. Again, it could work out. Hopefully you can sell off Tony Pollard during the season. Maybe you bought low on him because you think he's supremely undervalued and you're going to get more for him during the season. But this was kind of a panic move. I think Amari Cooper and Derrick Henry both have good projections. If people aren't going to give you the value now, wait until September or wait until October when you can sell those guys off for more than what they're worth now, because at that point in time, that production will matter and people will actually care that Amari Cooper's wide receiver 11 in points per game and Derrick Henry's a running back 8 in points per game.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It kind of feels like you sold under market value at this point of the offseason, while knowing that all of your pieces right now are the type of pieces that can gain value, with Amari Cooper and Derrick Henry in season as aging assets that are flippable early portion rather than in the offseason. And with Garrett Wilson specifically, because his ascension value could legitimately be the wide receiver 4 in Dynasty if Aaron Rodgers looks like any semblance of himself.
I honestly think he could get higher than that, man. Like, if he has a top 5 redraft season this year, he's going to be a 24-year-old wide receiver, probably get a massive contract extension. Again, we don't know what the quarterback situation will be in New York long term, but I do feel like he actually has the value accumulation potential to surpass one of the current top 3 dynasty wide receivers if they were to have a rough season or something like that because of the youth factor there. So we can move on to the next trade here, which is from Devontae. So looking at Devontae's trade here, we can see the league settings are vastly different. So again, this is the great feature of our Dynasty Trade Calculator: full PPR, no tight end premium, no super flex, 1 quarterback league, start 9. So the scoring format's vastly different than some of the teams that we've talked about so far. He wants to go and he wants to secure the services of one Christian McCaffrey, who is obviously extremely valuable in a shallow start 9, 1 quarterback league. He goes out and he pays T. Higgins, the 308 in this rookie class, and the 111. Doesn't mention who the guy got at 111. We'll just assume it's like Brian Thomas, Vlad McConkey, somebody like that. But he does have a monster team already. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, David Njoku, all these type of guys. He also has the 103 and the 202 in the rookie class. And he mentions that he's the defending champion in this league, and the pot accumulates, and there's like basically an additional amount of money in the pot right now. So this is one of those years that you really want to try and contend. And of course, having won the championship last year, adding Christian McCaffrey makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's an Empire League setup is basically what he defines here. So there's 1,200 currently in the pot if he's able to take on that back-to-back. Other piece of context, by the way, obviously the 308 in a 1 quarterback, the 111 in a 1 quarterback league, going to have less value than those in a super flex. So when you're comparing this trade, if you're trying to win now, you're trying to buy point equity for a guy that we each have ranked inside our top 3 to 5 overall redraft players, is the guy that's probably going to go 101 in the majority of your guys' drafts. At that point, I understand McCaffrey is a depreciating asset, but if you're able to win the pot this year and you're able to get an extra $1,200 for doing so, you do this trade every single time in your situation.
Yeah, and I would imagine because I'm a little lower on McCaffrey and because I'm high on Higgins, yeah, I would figure the market actually prefers this deal even more. These are expert rankings, so combination of me, Danny, Mason, all the guys there, because Christian McCaffrey, like I said, is that big of a needle mover in a 1 quarterback start 9. It makes sense why he would be a great asset to go and acquire. Yeah. So great job on Devontae here. He's a winning team. He's a contending team. Get that Empire pot, get that $1,200. This is a great move. Could trade away a bunch of noise, basically. I like Higgins. I like the 111. Even in a 1 quarterback league, you should get a decent player there. But yeah, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey for a contending team that, by the way, already has Bijan and Gibbs at running back. So Christian McCaffrey, one of those guys becomes your flex essentially at that point.
Yeah, and I actually think you're sorted on Superflex right now. So if you actually do it by one quarterback, it should be even more
No, I'm
favorable.
not.
No,
I
it's
have
one
it on one
quarterback. Okay.
quarterback. Yeah.
Okay. The reason why I pointed that out is because I saw overall McCaffrey overall 35, so I wasn't sure if it gauged. But regardless, though, I mean, as you can see, the moniker there still shows that you're winning, and in your spot, it makes even more sense. So you love getting fair value, especially when you're in a leveraged situation where that's kind of the direction you have to go, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next team here, which is from Rapscallion, a trade that he has on the board for us. So looking at Rapscallion's trade here, he is in a 12-team Superflex half tight end premium start 10. So we've made those adjustments in the calculator here. He had the 103 already and the 106 as well. He went Neighbors at 103, Odunze at 106. So he's already able to replenish the some of the assets that he's going to lose in this deal. And again, I mean, Breece Hall, I guess, is a running back, but still being able to replenish those wide receivers feel good. And he says, I'm looking to replenish my running back position in 2025 because it's a high leverage draft class for that position. And he also got Drake May with this 105 too, which me and you both have ranked at 103. So I would imagine if I plug Drake May into this right now, it's going to say that we won this trade even more, getting DK Metcalf and Drake May for one Breece Hall. And it does say you're in fact robbing them. So yeah, I think he says, I think DK and Drake May was a good way to build out my wide receiver and quarterback room before next season. Because if he's in kind of a 1-year punt, which is what it sounds like, you move off of Breece Hall. Again, Breece Hall is a hard asset to move away from because one of the few running backs in Dynasty that you could hypothetically hold in a 1-year rebuild, 1-year punt type of situation. But getting a young quarterback like Drake May, who has the value accumulation potential that you could sell him for any running back plus a first-round pick if he hits, or plus multiple first-round picks if he hits big this season, and getting DK Metcalf to boot for Breece Hall and some noise, I think this was a great move, to be honest.
It's the perfect insulated trade. Again, Drake May's already a guy that we have above the market, that we have straight up above Breece Hall. But even if you view Breece Hall over Drake May, like plug that in as Jaden Daniels, who is our 105. Let's just say that was Jaden Daniels that fell and not Drake May. You'll see that it'll spit out the same thing here. We both win this deal because at the end of the day, even though you slightly prefer Breece Hall to Jaden Daniels, getting that insulation of DK Metcalf while also getting the value appreciation potential of the young rookie quarterback that just went second or third overall, second obviously in the case of Jaden Daniels, third in your case specifically with Drake May. It's just the sharp move to make every single time because it kind of feels like, you're buying DK Metcalf for kind of free here because I view the 105 asset as being on par with Breece Hall.
Yeah, and I actually have Breece Hall RB2 in Dynasty. So if I go to your Dynasty rankings, you probably you have an even bigger swing because you have Jahmyr Gibbs above Breece Hall in terms of overall
He's
Dynasty
my 2 as well.
back rankings. So yeah,
Breece is also my 2, but yeah, the point remains though is that we have Drake May so far ahead of the market that any type of plus on Drake May for a guy that we already have ahead of Breece Hall is going to look like a steal on our end.
Right. You just have Drake May a little bit higher in your startup ranking. So yeah, easy trade to diagnose. I think you definitely won that one. Great process move, especially considering you're kind of like in a 1-year punt, Rapscallion. So let's move on to the next trade here coming from Wanye. So Wanye's team actually in a 16-teamer, start 9. So obviously depth is important because there's a lot of teams, but a start 9 also indicates that you still need a great starting lineup. I mean, it's unfortunate that the guys that went at these prices, Bo Nix, Ladd McConkey, and Trey Benson, originally this trade was 102, Marvin Harrison, for 111, 110, and 114. Unfortunately, the guys that went here are all guys that I really like, Bo Nix, Ladd McConkey, Trey Benson. If we go just by expert rankings, this might look a little bit better. Actually, it looks even worse in this case, but regardless, I think that this is a fine move to make. I know the trade calculator says, you slightly lose this trade or you lose this trade, but going up and get Marvin Harrison, I'm assuming you only made this move because you're in a position of winning. You're in a position to actually go out and win a championship. You already have depth. You already have draft capital. So it kind of hurts losing Bo Nix, who's in a 16-team Superflex, has value. Ladd McConkey, obviously going to have value as well. Trey Benson, top 12 running back, top 15 running back on the market right now for us. You look at this situation and you're like, man, it sucks to lose that kind of depth in a 16-teamer, but it's Marvin Harrison. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, so if you actually sort by mine too, it might even be more in your favor because I have Marvin a little bit higher than the market does. Okay, so it still says you slightly lose, but regardless, given the context, I'm assuming you're making this deal because you have depth. I'm assuming you're making this deal because you are you need a needle-moving player in a contending window. Although the calculator says not, I'm cool with the deal. personally.
Yeah, there's not much really else for me to add other than like I only like Wanye has submitted trades and DD teams for years now. Like I know he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just like, you went and got an elite asset. To me, that just totally made sense in my opinion. But I also don't think it's a bad move from the other guy's perspective if he needs depth in a 16 team super flex league. It's like his team obviously was bad if he had the 102 this year. In a 16 teamer, your team has to be really bad in that situation. So I look at this as this guy's able to replenish his depth, get himself a starting quarterback out of it, get another wide receiver out of it, get a running back out of it. It makes sense for both sides.
Yeah, 100%.
Looking at this next deal from Raggy Shoggers here, he has a 12-team, one quarterback league, full PPR. Doesn't actually even mention that it's tight end premium, so I'm going to turn that one off. But it's in a really good, like looking at this trade, like you absolutely fleeced this guy. If this is in fact a one quarterback league, in Superflex, maybe we can just talk about the ramifications of this deal. But in a one quarterback league, getting Breece Hall for the 106 in a rookie class and the 108, you essentially traded Breece Hall. Hypothetically, let's even just say that's both Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson for simplicity's sake, talking about the two running backs in this class, because you might have actually gotten those players at 106 and 108 respectively. And to me, I'm taking Breece Hall every single time. And even more than likely, this is like, Lad McConkey and, potentially Trey Benson with that other pick. Like in a one quarterback league, 12-team league, I'm looking for needle movers. I'm looking for absolute hammers, and Breece Hall is absolutely that. In a one quarterback startup, we're talking about a top 10 to 12 startup pick here.
Yeah, 100%. I think in a one quarterback league, you go buy some hammers. Again, given the context of the setup here, 12-team PPR, 6-point passing touchdown. You don't mention here that this is a very, lineup intensive league. Like this isn't your start 11, 12, 13, one quarterback league. So going off of that assumption, I'm assuming this is probably a start 8 to 10, which is what the calculator is spitting out here. And if that's the case, I mean, you're taking Breece Hall side every single time.
Yeah, like even if I add another wide receiver spot in to make it a start 9, it's still the type of deal that you absolutely want to walk away with. If it is in fact a super flex, again, he didn't say it was super flex, so I'm assuming it's not. It does say that you lose this trade because then obviously that 106 and 108 become like Romo Dunze and JJ McCarthy or Brock Bowers, which again, then you can maybe have a real debate saying, would you rather sell a back end second, early third round startup asset like Breece Hall for a late third, early fourth, or two late third, early fourth round startup assets like Romo Dunze, JJ McCarthy, and Brock Bowers, which in that case, I think it makes sense that you don't make that move. But again, you specified one quarterback here. So it's very clear to me that you won this trade getting Breece Hall for two mid to late projected here, or not projected, 106 and 108 for the 2024 class for sure. Definitely a great move.
Yeah, and those that might be curious, okay, why is it so different between a super flex and a one quarterback? Let's just say you're a one quarterback main, you haven't indulged in super flex. Well, the main context there is that with the quarterbacks being prioritized in the super flex with Caleb, with Jaden Daniels, with JJ McCarthy, that we know are going to be within the first top 8 of picks of your rookie draft. Getting the 106 and the 108, like Roma Dunze is a guy I have ranked inside my top 36 in super flex rankings. 108, whether that's Brock Bowers or JJ McCarthy, is going to be another guy I have ranked in my top 40. So there's a big difference between in a super flex, JJ McCarthy plus Roma Dunze for Breece Hall versus in a one quarterback. Maybe you're lucky and that's Brian Thomas or Lad McConkey or Xavier Worthy at the 106, plus one of those running backs you mentioned at the 108.
Yeah, not to mention there's leagues where Drake May falls to 106 in Superflex too, which is a completely different ball game, and that would obviously tilt the scales in favor of the 106 and 108 side of the deal. So definitely a great move. We can move on to Nathan Shin's trade. So we have Nathan's deal here. He was able to, he's in a long-term rebuild. I know this because he submitted his team for review on the site, which is also a feature. You get a free voucher as an annual mother flocker to do so while you're on here. And he submitted his team, and I know he's a long-term productive struggle. He's looking for picks. He's looking to get production off of his team. So that's definitely key context that we need to take into account here. It is a one quarterback, 12-team, half PPR, start 8. So running backs are going to have a little bit more value in a half PPR, especially in a one quarterback league too. So James Cook, I mean, this look in a super flex trade, this would be not even close, right? Like if it was Tajay Spears in an early first for James Cook and David Njoku, super flex, that's not even close. But in a one quarterback league, James Cook and David Njoku are going to have a little bit more value in that situation. But I still absolutely love what you were able to do because you're going to punt that pick into 2025 early first projected. I looked at the guy's team. It's absolutely horrible. He has like nobody really of relevance on that roster. So
Ricky's team?
Getting that kind of pick for James Cook and David Njoku really helps further your rebuild. You can add a Luther Burden. You can add a, Ollie Gordon or Ashton Janty, one of these top end running backs in next year's class.
So the context for sure is that Ricky's team is going to be an early to mid first round pick.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100%. It'll probably be 101 to 103 guaranteed.
Oh, if that's the case, obviously a smash in your end. Even if so search this based on if that's a mid to late first round pick. I'm actually curious. And go to mine after as well. Because
I would
I am
imagine it's
curious.
probably going to balance out a lot more in that. Yeah, it's saying that they're
What would it
not
show for me?
actually
Because
even close in this situation. That early to mid first is crucial information for a one quarterback, right?
Fair.
Because in a one quarterback league, like the class is going to fall off a little bit sooner.
Yeah, because the way I would view that is James Cook more or less is probably what in a one quarterback league, the projected 108, 109 area. So in my opinion, about a mid to late in his own right. And then obviously because we have Njoku rated higher than Spears, if that was a mid to late one, I would agree with what the calculator's spitting. But because of the context that it's an early to mid first, and like you said, it's probably on the earlier side. Give me Tajay Spears and the first round pick every single time, especially when you said, given the context of his team, he's not trying to contend. He's shedding James Cook and David Njoku's point equity off of his team. This is how you rebuild in Dynasty. You bank future liquidity, you get point production off your team from non-needle moving assets, and you retool that for the next offseason when you can add potentially a needle mover with that pick if it ends up, like you said, Luther Burden, Tet McMillan, Ashton Janty, Ollie Gordon. Even on quarterback leagues, those picks are going to be valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Those guys have a chance to be top 5 to 10 dynasty running backs right off the bat. Luther Burden, potentially a top 15, 20 wide receiver right off the bat. And if you're guaranteed basically one of those guys in this trade, it is a worthwhile move to make. So let's move on to the next one here from J.H. Davis. With J.H. Davis's trade here, we can see that he acquires the rookie 101, gets Will Levis as well. Again, Will Levis in a one quarterback league. That's the scoring format that we have here. Not a super valuable asset. Maybe you just needed a depth quarterback or whatever the case is. And he traded up in this case from the 103 to get the 101. So you're basically saying, I love Rome Odunze, but I absolutely want Marvin Harrison. You give up the 109. You give up Deontay Johnson. You give up a mid-second in 2024, which was the 208 in this rookie class, and you just say, I want Marvin Harrison Jr. And Marvin Harrison Jr. in a one quarterback startup, we're talking about a top 5 to 7 asset overall. So this is the type of dude that you absolutely want to sell the farm for, hypothetically, because 103 Rome Odunze, probably a second round pick in startups in a one quarterback league. 109, probably a fourth rounder, fifth rounder, potentially, if you get lucky and some, high-end wide receiver falls to you there, maybe a McConkey, a Thomas, a Worthy, or maybe one of the running backs there at 109. But yeah, I'm very comfortable paying this price for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I would agree completely as well. I mean, this is a very easy price to be able to play for Marvin Harrison Jr., especially with the context. This is a one quarterback league. Marvin Harrison Jr. for me is going to be valued as a top 4 overall asset in those leagues, in my opinion. After the 3 top wide receivers, he would be my next ranked player. So if you're trying to buy a needle moving asset, like if you're contextualizing that to a super flex, it'd be about what would you be willing to pay for CJ Stroud right now in the startups? That's kind of how you got to invert your brain towards one quarterback leagues, because Marvin Harrison Jr., 104 in a one quarterback, CJ Stroud, the 104 in a super flex.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how this would change in a superflex, because Levis obviously would factor into this trade a lot more. It would become a fair trade in a superflex league. I just thought that was interesting, because in a one quarterback league, I mean, this isn't even remotely close. And J.H. Davis did never mention that it was superflex or one quarterback, so we're assuming it's one quarterback because he just said 12-team PPR start 10. But start 10 is a pretty deep one quarterback league, so it is possible this is a superflex trade. If this is a superflex trade, I'm still definitely comfortable making this move up for Caleb Williams. But assuming it's a one quarterback league, Marvin Harrison makes a lot of sense to go and trade up for there. So let's move on to the next trade here from Akiva. So looking at this deal, whole lot going on, right? He wants to sell the 101 situation. I think a lot of dynasty managers found themselves in this offseason because he already had Kyler Murray, already had Trevor Lawrence, already had Aaron Rodgers. So selling off the 101 makes sense in that situation, even though, to be honest, I probably would have taken Caleb and sold off one of your other quarterbacks if I was in your position. But again, some people want to just do that. So you sell off Caleb Williams, you sell off Ladd McConkey, which was the 201 originally, but that's who they took at 201. And you sell off Romeo Doubs in exchange for Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, Chase Brown, the 208, which became Ricky Pearsall, and a projected mid to late first in 2025. Now, at face value, I think some people might argue this is a good return. You got a great wide receiver 1 in Puka Nacua. He's a first-round redraft pick. You got Mike Evans, who's going to be a productive top 15, top 20 guy for you this year. Chase Brown and Ricky Pearsall, your upside swings, and you got a mid to late first in 2025. So for me, the way I break this down, because it does say they're robbing you according to the trade calculator here, and I absolutely agree that I would prefer the Caleb Williams side, It's because Caleb Williams is my 7th overall player in Dynasty Superflex startups right now. I'm a little bit lower on Puka Nacua, but even if you're higher on Puka Nacua, I still think I prefer the Caleb Williams side, because Caleb Williams is a Superflex asset that is worth 3+ first-round picks. And to me, when I break this down, it's like McConkey cancels out the mid to late first next year. To me, I think he's absolutely worth that pick as a prospect this year. So it becomes Caleb Williams, Romeo Dobbs. Again, Romeo, who cares? I'll just cancel out Chase Brown in that situation. It's basically Caleb Williams for Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, and Ricky Pearsall. And to me, that's like an early second, late first valuation for Mike Evans, a mid-first valuation, or maybe a mid-second on top of that for Puka Nacua, and then like a mid to late second for Ricky Pearsall. To me, it's not enough for Caleb Williams. I need better assets than less volume like what you got here.
Yeah, I agree. So, like, let's just take away, I mean, for me, Ladd McConkey, 2025 mid to late 1, give or take. Let's cancel them out. I would probably slightly
throw Dobbs on there too. Let's just
sure.
Make it
I mean, like, I would also prefer Ladd McConkey straight up to 1 projected mid to late 1, but for E's sake, yeah, like you said, let's just say McConkey plus Dobbs equals maybe 2025 mid to late 1 plus Chase Brown or something like that, give or take, right? So then at that point, it's like, okay, are we evaluating Caleb Williams versus Evans, Puka, Pearsall? It makes sense. Start 11. You need wide receivers. Like, I get why you did this deal. But the problem here is that even if we evaluate this as a fair deal right now, your side has no appreciability compared to the other side. Even if we evaluate, let's just say right now, Caleb Williams is worth Evans, Puka, and Pearsall. There's no world, in my opinion, where anybody on the side that you're getting could be a first-round startup pick. There's definitely a world where Caleb Williams is the 101 startup pick. So that's where I keep faulting back to. Like, I need to be getting an overpay if I'm moving a guy like Caleb Williams, knowing that if he has a good rookie season, it's CJ Stroud plus all over again, to be honest. Because I do feel like going into his draft, people have a higher regard of Caleb Williams, just even based off his market value. Like CJ Stroud last year, mid-third round pick. Caleb Williams is a rookie without even taking a snap, top 10 overall player. At that point, like, if he has a similar season to what CJ Stroud did, he will be valued above Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. We got to wait for it.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that with Caleb Williams, you're also getting a little bit more rushing upside. He has better pass catching weapons, at least entering the season, than what CJ Stroud had coming into his rookie season. So yeah, I agree. I think I understand the move. You needed wide receivers. It makes sense at face value. But to me, I think the execution of this trade probably needed some work. If you could have sold, say, Caleb Williams straight for Puka Nacua and another wide receiver that's relatively similar value to Puka Nacua, say Puka Nacua and Garrett Wilson gets off of Caleb Williams for you, like, that might sound like a steep price tag to anybody who's looking to buy Caleb Williams, but that is how much he should be worth, in our opinion. Like, that is how much appreciability this guy has to potentially be the best asset in Dynasty midway or at the end of his rookie season. He has the potential, unlike very few people in Dynasty Fantasy Football, to be the first pick off the board in Superflex startups, worth 4+ first-round picks. And I tried to trade down from 101 in some leagues. Nobody was willing to give me what I was willing to sell Caleb Williams for. So I took him in every league that I had 101 in. And in fact, I actually traded up for him at 101 in one league because I don't think people are valuing him enough.
Yeah, and for me, it's tough. Like, I'm going to have to face the reality that I'm not going to end up with any 101 Caleb Williams teams because it seems like 90% of my portfolio was competing last year. But yeah, like, even if you have Caleb Williams, like, you have to understand, like, the appreciation value here, people are already taking it into effect from their market value. Like, although he's valued, people pretty much agree he is a first round startup pick. It almost feels like he's way harder to acquire than a Justin Herbert, than a Joe Burrow, than even Lamar Jackson. Like, it feels like it's easier to acquire Lamar Jackson right now than it is Caleb Williams.
I think that's because everybody could use Caleb Williams, whereas only competitive teams potentially would be interested in a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson or something like that. Plus, there's also the mystery box meme, where, like, nobody knows what Caleb Williams is yet, whereas we have a big sample size on those other guys, and some people aren't going to like Lamar Jackson, aren't going to like Justin Herbert. They're going to have more opinions about that kind of thing. So, yeah, for me, I think Caleb Williams is an asset that's worth his weight in gold, and to me, you sold a little bit low on him. Understand the rationale, but to me, it was poor execution. So looking at the final trade of the video here, we have it from FSU 13, 12-team Superflex PPR start 9. So we got that in the trade calculator right now. He said it's a win now team. He's made a ton of consolidation trades this offseason. He sent like 4 or 5 trades in. He went and acquired A.J. Brown for a consolidation move. He went and acquired Jalen Hurts in a consolidation move, went and acquired Brandon Ayuk in a consolidation move. But this one was my favorite because I wanted to talk about this because, you know, if you're in a position where you've built up a lot of assets, built up a lot of liquidity, built up a lot of guys on the open market that have value. And this is why we preach, when you're in a rebuild, you don't want to be drafting for need. You want to be drafting the best available players because you can do things like this when you actually decide that you're ready to compete and you're able to sell off Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, 2 upside swings at wide receiver that are not really worth more than like mid seconds unless you're really, really high on them at best. And then he sells off his own first round pick. So I'm assuming that one's mid to late. He didn't mention whether or not the other first round pick that he sells off in this deal was mid to late or not. So I even put it in as early to mid just to cover his ass in case it is an early pick here. But you're still robbing them for CeeDee Lamb because in a super flex league where you could start all these wide receivers, a start 9 league, I believe it's a 3 wide receiver start. It's a PPR. CeeDee Lamb's a top 12 startup asset in my rankings. If I go to your rankings, you're even higher on CeeDee Lamb, and I think even lower on Watson and Jeudy too. So you even have it like basically double the amount of value getting CeeDee Lamb here. And again, if I assume that that was a early to mid first, and it's not, and it's in fact a mid to late first, instead, this is going to be an absolute highway robbery type of deal here. And I'm looking for it right now, and I cannot seem to find it. Where is mid to late first? Am I blind?
Just type it in 2025 mid, and it should show up. And just type mid.
Oh, it's because I already have one in there.
Oh, okay, fair. I guess you can't have multiple inputs, but regardless, if you guys want a summary, a frame, a visual for like what an elite wide receiver should cost, in a league that I'm trying to go from a punting team, house money team to a contender this year, I had to pay. So Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, I actually have CeeDee Lamb a little bit higher, but for ease sake, even value in terms of the calculator. I had to give up the 106, the 203, 2 early to mid projected 2025 first, and I got back Justin Jefferson and Xavier Worthy. That's what an elite wide receiver should cost, not whatever you just paid, because that guy got fleeced.
Yeah, and I mean, the A.J. Brown and Ayuk deals, he fleeces these guys on as well, too. So, and the Hurts, I think he, like, I can't remember what the Hurts trade was, but it was, like, egregiously underpriced for an elite quarterback like that. So, I mean, obviously, FSU 13, you're going to be having some fun this year with your elite roster. His starting lineup is, like, loaded. I think all of them are, like, top 3-round redraft picks. And when you account for where they would go in a super flex redraft league, it would be even higher than that. So, again, very, very good team that he's built up so far. This is what it looks like when you make a consolidation move that you absolutely love to see. So again, if you guys did make it to the end of this video, we did showcase our flock trade calculator throughout the entirety of this thing. Appreciate you guys for joining us. And also make sure if you want to use this trade calculator, again, it is totally customizable to your league settings. If you play in a 16-team start 13 because you're a complete psychopath, well, we have a trade calculator that covers your needs. And I guarantee nobody else has a trade calculator that would cover needs like that, where depth would be extremely important. If you play in a start 7, 1 quarterback, 8-man dynasty league, then you absolutely would be covered by this too. And pretty much anybody with a top 4-round startup asset is going to be worth their weight in gold, and everybody else is going to be completely useless. So again, if you want to use that trade calculator, head on over to flockfantasy.com, use the promo code FSE. When you sign up right now, you get 30% off. You get a 7-day free trial. You also get a free team review. We can go through one of your teams, break down what you need to improve on and all that kind of stuff. When you sign up as an annual Mother Flocker using promo code FSE, you just go to the My Team section, load your team in, submit your team for review, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can, probably within 24 hours, 48 hours at the very latest. So definitely check all that stuff out if you're interested. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.